ahead with that. Great. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Welcome to the second webinar of the Climate Resilient South Fraser Businesses Program. That's a mouthful. This webinar is being delivered by BC Green Business in partnership with Community Futures South Fraser. And the topic for today's webinar will be Climate Action 101 and Decarbonizing Your Business. Hey, yeah, again, I would like to begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you all today from the traditional and unceded territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples. Today, we recognize this land is of the Esquimalt and Songhees Nation, and we like to share the First Peoples map of BC in the chat whenever we start a webinar. It's an interactive map of Indigenous languages, arts, and heritage, so take some time to explore it and learn something cool about the Indigenous history of your region. And a bit about myself. My name is Deep Chahal, and I'm a Green Business Associate and Project Manager with Synergy Foundation. I work with businesses to help further their environmental and social initiatives, as well as create educational content around sustainability. Okay, so the agenda for the day will be we'll begin with a brief introduction to BC Green Business, followed by the bulk of the webinar, which will be an introduction to climate action and decarbonizing your business. We will then be joined by Brett, who will share Eagle Wing Tour's sustainability journey. So be sure to have questions for him and ask him about his experience, and followed by some time for questions and some general closing remarks. Right, yeah, and through this series, we hope to provide an overview of how and where sustainability can be incorporated in your business. It can be difficult getting started, so hopefully, you take a few key takeaways from the webinar today, and that helps you get started. And again, today we'll be talking about carbon accounting and ways to decarbonize. But we do have another webinar coming up next Thursday, during which we will explore practical and affordable ways to reduce your business's environmental impact and also enhance your social initiatives. Okay, so Synergy Foundation was founded in 2013 with a mission to share ideas, spark innovation, and activate change to steer our economy and communities towards a more regenerative future. And we have three core programs to help us work towards that mission. So one being BC Green Business, which supports sustainable business practices across the province. We have Fed Urban Agriculture, which is a Victoria-based charity promoting food security and sustainable food systems. And then we have Project Zero, which offers programming to grow the circular economy. Yeah, so what's BC Green Business? A nonprofit environmental certification program, and we work one-on-one with businesses to enhance their sustainability initiatives and certify into the program. We've got a few different certification levels. We've got silver, gold, green. So depending on how they score, businesses get certified at one of those levels. And this is kind of what the certification process looks like. So, scheduling the site visit is quick and easy. We use that through our website, followed by a site visit, which can either be in person or virtual. And then we create a customized suggested actions report for each of the business that we work with. We give businesses some time to take action and follow up, followed by finalizing the certification, promoting their initiatives, giving them their environmental metrics, and then having certain events, educational materials, and also creating marketing assets for those businesses. And yeah, these are some of the areas that we focus in. We have building and operations. So that includes, looking at basic building equipment, lighting, waste section. We delve into the waste management and recycling practices. We've got the water section, and that's all actions about, increasing efficiency and reducing water consumption. In the transportation section, we talk about the shipping practices, staff commuting, among other actions, purchasing, so we look at the eco-friendliness of the project, of the products that you're procuring. Climate action includes actions such as measuring your GHG emissions, which we'll be talking about later today. And then finally, we have the social action, which, looking at community engagement, employee benefits, and so on. And these are all the sectors that we work with. So offices, restaurants, retail, spa salons, food and beverage, grocery stores, and fleet-based businesses. We've also added general checklists for any sort of like service-based business or goods manufacturer because we saw a gap and had to turn away some businesses who were looking to join the program. So we kind of developed those checklists to fill in the gap. And yeah, here's an example of one of our members from Victoria, 49 Below. They are one of our highest scoring members in the restaurant sector, and they have incorporated many great actions, such as creating a eco-friendly purchasing policy, conducting waste audits, and they also partnered with a local grocery store to kind of upcycle unsellable produce and make that into ice cream. All right. And so if any of this sounds interesting to you, we do have 15 fully funded certifications available for businesses in Chilliwack and Abbotsford. And we will also be here in person on November 21st at the Involve Abbotsford Symposium. Okay. So, moving on to the main topic of discussion for today's webinar, understanding the basics of climate action and how businesses can design and implement decarbonization strategies. Okay, so the outline or key takeaways from this section will be thinking about decarbonization as a business strategy, understanding the basics of carbon accounting. We'll go over a few sample emission profiles, and then finally, discuss key considerations for your own business's decarbonization plan. Okay, so the question that we kind of like begin with is why do we need to take action? And I imagine the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is the current state of the climate. So according to IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the planet has already warmed to 1.2 degrees above the pre-industrial levels. And for each degree of warming that we see, we have 7% more moisture in the atmosphere. And it is due to this increase in moisture that we see an increase in the frequency and intensity of storms, which cause mass devastation, displacement, food insecurity. That's something we saw happen in Florida just last week. And even within BC, the changing weather patterns, they're leading to prolonged heat waves, increasing wildfires, which causes a lot of environmental as well as economic harm. So to tackle the situation that we're in, we need all hands on deck. Governments and international bodies are setting targets for reducing global emissions. For example, the Paris Agreement, which aims for net zero by 2050. But this cannot be done alone by the government. We need businesses to play a key role in driving this change. So when we talk about climate change, we have to talk about the most kind of abundant greenhouse gases and some of the most common emission sources. So here we kind of have the big six. So CO2, these are emissions related from fossil fuel use. Then we have PFCs and HFCs, which are used in refrigerants. We have methane, which is also commonly known as natural gas, used for heating and cooking. We have nitrous oxide, which is emitted largely from from various agricultural activities. Then we have NF3, or nitrogen trifluoride, which is produced in the manufacturing of semiconductors, LCDs, and other electronics. And then we have sulfur hexafluoride, which comes from the electric power industry. It is used as an insulating gas, but is emitted through leaks or decommissioning of various equipment. So now that we have learned that we should be decarbonizing for the planet, but there are other benefits associated with making the effort or the switch as well. So decarbonization can lead to operational cost reduction through practices such as route optimization or minimizing your material waste, better insulation and sealing of your facility. Measuring emissions can help you set a benchmark, create goals, and track your progress and environmental performance. And then you can be the ones leading the change, stay ahead of any regulatory compliance and gain brand recognition. Most Canadians will pay more for products or services that align with their values on environmental protection. And then also engaging stakeholders such as your customers, investors, suppliers, through clear and concise communication of your goals and the benefits of your climate change. Um, Sorry, we've got motion sensor lights, so no one's moved in a while, so everything goes dark. Okay, we're back. And finally, to attract values-aligned and driven employees, many workers, particularly millennials and Gen Z, are motivated by a sense of purpose and want to work for companies whose values align with their own. So, yeah, here we have a Big Wheel Burger. It's a food service business that has brought sustainability to its core and really exemplifies the use of decarbonization as a business strategy. So, Big Wheel Burger were the first carbon neutral fast food restaurant in Canada, and they've got various locations across Vancouver Island. All of them have been certified as green leaders by BC Green Business. And yeah, one initiative that they took on their journey towards decarbonization was ensuring that everything on the tray was fully compostable. So whatever you see here, everything goes to the compost instead of the landfill. And they've also seen a lot of reduction in their water use, saved over 30% in energy cost by incorporating operational changes and replacing old appliances. And since they are kind of leading the way for the fast food industry, they have received a lot of free press. Over 4 dozen articles have been published about them, which supports their marketing efforts. And also, they've also seen an increase in the job applicants for whenever they have a posting. They have, seen benefits of brand loyalty from their customers who want to support a business that incorporates sustainability. Okay, so to understand decarbonization, we need to begin with an intro to carbon accounting. So over the next few slides, we're going to go over the kind of like the beginner's guide to carbon accounting, which includes measuring, tracking, and reporting of your greenhouse gas or GHG emissions that a company or business is responsible for. Okay, so in carbon accounting, we classify emissions into three scopes to provide a more comprehensive picture of the company's footprint. So scope one captures what we call direct emissions. And as the name suggests, these are emissions from sources controlled by the company. So if you look at the slide in the diagram, in the innermost circle, we have a few examples of such emission sources. So, refrigerant leaks, controlled professional transport, or also company-owned vehicles, um, and emissions from kind of like the production process itself. So those will be captured in scope one. And then comes scope two, which captures your indirect emissions from energy use. So any emissions from the purchased electricity and heating or cooling. These emissions they occur at the power plant, but they are as a result of the company's energy use. And then finally, scope three does the job of capturing any other indirect emissions that are not covered by scope one and two. So these include emissions from the company's supply chain, product use, their employees commuting to work, business travel, and waste. And this is often the largest or the most difficult scope to measure. To begin measuring your greenhouse gas emissions, you will need to start with data collection. And there are two main components when it comes to emissions measurement. So that is activity data and emissions factors. So if we're kind of looking at an example. So if you're measuring the emissions from a company-owned vehicle, we can do it by gathering activity data, which will be liters of diesel used in this case, and then the emissions factor of the fuel, and then plug it into this equation, and you get the tons of CO2 equivalent emitted by that activity. And these emissions factors, they're basically values that are used to estimate the greenhouse gas emissions associated with specific activities or processes. So in this case, 100 liters of diesel will emit 0.26 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. And today we have many resources available out online to help you find the emissions factors of many different activities or processes. The Greenhouse Gas Protocol, for example, is a globally recognized framework, and that provides standardized guidelines for calculating emissions across various industries, which ensures consistency as well as transparency. And these tools or calculators eliminate the need for you to do all the calculations manually. So all you really need is the activity data and plug those numbers in a calculator to get your total carbon emitted. I would encourage you all to try and use the Vancity Carbon Calculator. It's a free tool, a Microsoft Excel-based tool, and has emissions factors specific to BC and is quite easy to use. We will actually have someone drop a link to that in the chat below, so that you can check it out after the webinar. So once you've measured your greenhouse gas emissions, so not just for the one example, the diesel use, but all of scope 1 and scope 2, the next step of the process is to set achievable targets for reduction. So to begin, let's talk about the reduction plans that the government has in place. So in 2021, the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act was passed, and which basically binds the federal government to achieve net zero by 2050. And since 2050 is still over 25 years away, they have also put in place an interim reductions goal, and that is to achieve 40 to 45% emissions reductions compared to the emissions levels that we saw in 2005. And as you can imagine, achieving this goal requires lots of collaboration between many different bodies of governments, communities, as well as businesses. And businesses set their emissions reductions goal for many different reasons. For really big corporations, it is to comply with emission standards. But when we talk about small to medium-sized businesses, there are many benefits of setting targets, such as cost savings, there's market competitiveness, and also to attract talent. So here we have two examples of small to medium-sized organizations. First of all, we have Eagle Wing Tours. Brett will be talking about this in his part of the presentation, but Eagle Wing Tours, they're already carbon neutral, but now they want to go beyond that. They want to continue to measure their emission, their energy consumption, and find ways to improve energy efficiency with an aim to be carbon negative by 2030. And another example that I wanted to share here is that of a target set by Victoria International Airport. And this is for waste reduction. And although they have their own GHG emissions target in place as well, I just wanted to share the waste diversion target since, this is something a small business can also do. And reducing waste also directly reduces your GHG emissions and is a great way to reduce operational costs for a business. So in the case of Victoria International Airport, they have seen an increase in waste diversion from 21% in 2016 to 58% in 2019. And their next target is to achieve 90% reduction by 2030. So where should a small to medium-sized business start in terms of setting a reduction goal? So based on Canada's goal and according to Science-Based Targets Initiative, or SBTI, which is a global organization that helps businesses set scientifically grounded targets, a small to medium-sized business should target around an annual reduction of 6 to 8% of their total greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, so we've talked about two most important components of carbon accounting, that is measuring and reduction targets. So now let's look at a few real life examples. So this is a total carbon footprint of a hotel in British Columbia as measured by Synergy Enterprises, which is our sister company. And the pie chart here, it breaks down the total GHG emissions by scope. So the gray section of the pie is scope 1 or direct emissions, the yellow section being scope 2 or indirect emissions from energy use, and finally the blue section being scope 3 or indirect emissions that are beyond scope 2. So in here, one might wonder, why is a scope 2 so small, such a small percentage of the overall GHG emissions? Um, when you think of a hotel, you probably think of them using a lot of electricity. Yeah, so does anyone want to take a guess as to why this is such a small percentage? Oh, I see something in the chat. No, those are just links. Okay. Well, there are many different reasons as why this could be, but if you remember from the activity data slide, emissions factor is a part of the equation when we measure emissions. So the grid that supplies your electricity plays an important role in your decarbonization plan. For example, if you live in Alberta and switch to electrical heating and electrical vehicles instead of gas-powered, your scope 2 emissions will still be a lot higher than a business that makes the exact same switch in BC or PEI, because a large portion of the electricity comes from renewable sources. So hydro for BC, and then lots of wind farms in PEI. Yeah, and if you look at the emissions factor here, the grid in Alberta has 50 times the emissions associated with the production of 1 kilowatt hour of electricity compared to BC or Manitoba. So electrification is a great strategy for a business that gets its energy from a clean grid. So a business in BC or Manitoba. Okay, now for the biggest emission source for this hotel is natural gas. So to meet the reduction target, this hotel should really be focusing on electrification or increasing the resource efficiency through retrofits or operational changes. So let's take a look at what actions this hotel could implement. So we know that this hotel in particular, their hot water tank or hot water heater uses natural gas instead of electricity, but they can make changes to reduce its impact instead of just switching out to a brand new electric heater. They can use low flow shower heads and faucets that reduces the amount of water that needs to be heated. Energy Star washing machines and dishwashers will also reduce the amount of electricity used and the hot water that is used. And then using swimming pool covers to keep the water temperature from dropping down. As well as they could install a complementary heating system, such as a solar thermal water heater, which only uses sunlight to heat up the water. So these actions, they will not only reduce costs, but also reduce emissions. So it's a win-win situation. Okay, so here we have another example, moving on to a different sector. This is an emissions report from a restaurant here in Victoria. They also have natural gas as their biggest contributor, but also paper is responsible for 14% of their total emissions. Based on the paper use, does anyone have an idea as to what kind of restaurant this might be? Well, it is Big Wheel Burger, a fast food restaurant, which means they have a lot of people ordering food to go, or even when they're dining at their restaurant, the food is wrapped or served on paper. So the emissions increase. The emissions increase just from the sheer amount of paper that they have to use. But they have found ways to make the most of this challenge by ensuring that everything is fully compostable, reducing the amount of waste that they generate, and thereby reducing those extra emissions. And they've also incorporated some circular practices, such as creating compost from their packaging. The compost goes to local food gardens, and then they buy greens and produce from those gardens. Natural gas use can also come from stoves, cooktops, and ovens, but another kind of a sneaky contributor for natural gas emissions are these outdoor propane heaters, which is a must in Canadian winters, but there are electrical alternatives that businesses have started using or switching to. And finally, this is one of the other circular practices that Big Blue Burger has really leaned into. They have a delivery van that they use to move items between their different locations. So they've decided to power their van using biodiesel from a Vancouver Island-based company that makes biodiesel from waste oils from the restaurant industry, including deep fryer oil from Big Blue Burger itself, which makes for a great story. Okay, so we have one last example from another sector. This is an example emissions report from a coffee roaster. The emissions here seem to be more spread out, and we see that a huge percentage comes from shipping. That's because they have to ship green beans from other countries. Another large contributing factor is the fuel used from driving their delivery vehicles and natural gas from roasting. So the immediate reductions opportunity for for this business would be exploring other fuels to power their delivery vans. So, with increased availability of renewable diesel, they could switch to using that, and its emissions factors are 1/4 or less than that, 1/4 of that of traditional diesel. Um, but I think this business in particular, they ended up just turning away from their delivery service. So they sold 4 out of their 5 vans and just stopped offering delivery service. So that is another way, a really cost-effective way to slash delivery-related carbon emissions. But yeah, just looking at some of the other available options today, we have electric cars, SUVs, and vans. There's hydrogen-powered vehicles that are coming to the market, electric motors for boats, both inboard and outboard. We have electric forklifts and biodiesel, as we talked about it earlier, uses renewable sources such as vegetable oils, animal fat, waste oils, and that's blended with conventional diesel and sold as biodiesel. And then we also have renewable diesel, which is a lot cleaner than biodiesel and can be used as a drop-in fuel, which means the diesel engines need no modifications or retrofits. They can just switch from traditional diesel to renewable diesel. Biodiesel and renewable diesel are currently more expensive than traditional diesel, but with more infrastructure that's coming into place, we will see eventually the cost being more comparable to traditional fuel in the future. In 2023, actually, Canada's first renewable diesel refinery opened in Prince George, and the diesel that they're going to offer will see about an 80 to a 90% reduction in carbon emissions compared to fossil fuel diesel. Okay, so that was a lot of information, but now we have basic understanding of what carbon accounting means, how to measure emissions, setting achievable targets, and we've also looked at some examples. So it is time to create a decarbonization plan for your own business or organization. Each business is unique and is at a different place in their journey. But what's important is to start and plan on taking some actions each year. And if you need support to get started, you're always welcome to email us, ask questions, or I would even suggest joining the BC Green Business Program because it really gets you started on these small initiatives and gives you a better understanding on the environmental implications of the small changes that you make. But I do want to leave you with a few key decarbonization principles to make the process more approachable and maximize the benefits for your organization. So, ensuring a good return on investment, whether for you it looks like purchasing an EV or a new energy efficient HVAC system, there are various calculators online which will help you calculate the return on investment. Then align with your business plan. So incorporate sustainability into your business plan and operations. For example, if you need to switch out your current lighting, ensure that you are going with the most energy efficient LED options when you do have to make that change. Creating co-benefits. So if lots of your employees are driving to work, provide incentives for them to carpool. And they might look like, company credits or gift cards, but that also frees up space in your parking lot and reduces your scope 3 emissions. Oh, the light's gone again. Sorry about that. We are trying to be really efficient at our office, so everything is motion sensor based, and no one's here anymore. And then yeah, starting with low barrier, low kind of like the low hanging fruits, so that might look like switching out of your paper towel, switching out from using paper towel to a hand towel, or turning down your heat when the space is unoccupied. And then finally, getting the team involved. We all have that one person on our team who's really passionate about recycling. So, give them the task to find ways to reduce company waste. They can spend 2 or 3 hours of company time working towards that goal. But yeah, so involving the team like that. And yeah, I hope that wasn't an overwhelming amount of information, but, enough to inspire you to take the next step. Okay, so to switch gears here, I will be passing on the presentation to Brett, who is the co-owner, lead captain, and naturalist at Eagle Wing Tours, and has more than 24 years of experience within the whale watching industry. He has endless passion for the ocean, for wildlife, and then furthering, sustainability in the tourism industry. I personally am really excited to hear Brett talk about all the initiatives that they've taken so far and just Eagle Wing Tour's journey. You will have a Q&A section after Brett's presentation, so I highly encourage everyone to engage and ask questions at that point. Brett, I will let you take over from here. I have your slides loaded, so yeah, just say next slide whenever you want me to advance them, and I'll let you take it from here.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you for advancing because it's always awkward looking at your own mugshot on a screen. So we'll start there. First of all, good evening, everybody. And I will preface the fact that I am living on a new piece of property out in the middle of nowhere, completely off grid using satellite right now. So if this signal doesn't work and I pause, I am practicing my abilities to maintain a still disposition intentionally. So on that note, I've tried to keep this sort of at a very high level, introducing you sort of to who I am, what our business is, who we are, and then a bit of a short sort of one-on-one on our journey, where it started, where we are, and what we think where we need to go. And I really want to leave a lot of time for Q&A because I think that's where you're going to get the benefit. I've been in tourism for about 34, oh gosh, years, whale watching for 28 years, and have been an owner operator since 2005. So I've had my finger on the pulse of being on the water as a captain, naturalizing and educating the public, but also in the bellies of a boat, fixing motors and trying to understand how to save on costs and just kind of do business in a right way. So on that note, next slide, please, Deep. So our sustainable journey, first and foremost, we're a locally family-run business, have been since 1997. So Eagle Wing's been around since that date, over 28 years now. We're all very passionate wildlife educators and specialists. We're a conservation company that happens to sail whale and wildlife watching adventures. So we do consider ourselves stewards of the Salish Sea, and that frame of mind is really important. We're not a whale watching company that happens to do good work. We really sort of frame that the other way, and frame of mind is very important to walking down the path of sustainability or regenerative tourism. We have a very luxury boutique marine tour option, and sustainability is just a natural fit with what we do, being out in the open water. Next slide, please, Steve. We have a fleet of 5 boats. This is kind of maybe you've been on the water and you've seen us, watching wildlife, but five very distinct vessels with very unique personalities. And they both can be quite cranky or they can be very happy on the best of days. But we can drill down into the technology on the boats here in a moment. Next slide, please, Deep. So our vision is grouped into four main areas of activity predominantly, and we filter absolutely every with it conservation solutions, and we cultivate and support community-based research partnerships. And you'll learn more. We actually support 27 different organizations on an annual basis through our financial contributions and in-kind donations and volunteer time. With our team of 45 plus people peak season and 20 in the off season. Education is key as well. Building awareness on and off the water is essential to ocean conservation. You only protect what you know and what you understand and what you love. Next slide, please. And leaders in industry, what has been really, really cool, and Deep sort of touched on this a little bit, and I'm very happy to dive into that rabbit hole in terms of why we think we've got a very healthy business model. All of our operational choices have been made for the right reasons, and as a result, we have created our own little healthy ecosystem. We have and are the world's first whale watching tour operator to become Biosphere certified. Biosphere certification is definitely something that I will throw across your bow. Pardon the pun from a whale watching guy. Shocker. Um, and it has helped us out tremendously, i.e., it's a software program that allows us to capture all the really fabulous things that we do and we get credit for it. And that's sort of the high level on what Biosphere certification is. So put that in your back pocket. Carbon neutrality, we were the first carbon neutral whale watching operator in North America back in 2009. We were the first to become members for 1% for the planet in 2011, and that was an amazing decision. If you don't know what 1% for the planet is, please look it up. It in itself has fostered a lot of really fabulous networking opportunities and partnerships, which still continue to this day, 13 plus years later. So that's been fantastic for the business. We charged a conservation fee in 2013. Combined between 1% for the planet and conservation fee, we have donated over $1.25 million as of the end of last year, excluding 2024, which we anticipate another $250,000 to add to that tally. Again, supporting those 27 different organizations within the boundaries of the Salish Sea. That is important because it's relevant to our customer experience. We also exclusively run a floating classroom project, which is a 4-part custom created project in alignment with the BC school curriculum with the Victoria School District, grades 4 through grade 8. And to date, we've had about 8,000 kids through the program. We are getting about 3,600 through the program every single year, October to March, and I'm happy to touch on that. But all those things collectively, you might think, well, shoot, where in there are you selling a whale watching seat? I can tell you, this is just kind of who we are. And by extension of all these other cool things that we do off the water, you pull that on the water, and the story and the narrative just seamlessly sort of spills out, and the guests really resonate with that. And all of a sudden, their experience is elevated to a level where their expectations are blown out of the water. So collectively, all these little pieces really work quite well together. Next slide, please. So how in the heck did we get here? Well, first, we wanted to make a difference. We knew that there was opportunity for the whale watching industry to improve. We made choices based upon, quote, it is the right thing to do, not because of the return on investment. And I can tell you that frame of mind. But I can tell you that if you are making the choices for the right reasons and you're being responsible about where you do business, how you do business, and where you live and work, the return on investment is the positive byproduct of making the right choices. We then measured our carbon footprint. You need to collect data. We hired consultants, professionals. I hate numbers. It is not my skill set. It's not my forte. I'd rather talk about barnacles and why they're cool. We then created a plan from the said data. We created short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals based upon that information. We now use Synergy to guide us in our very complex business with decarbonization strategies and other cool projects as they come up. I mentioned the 1% for the planet in 2011. We implemented the conservation fee in 2013. We implemented the 4 pillars in 2017. The floating classroom project was 2017, 2018, and became biosphere certified just recently in 2023. And I'm happy to say that literally I have yet to go through my decarbonization strategy, which has just been created by our friends at Synergy. And it is super awesome. I'm vibrating already because there's a lot of really cool solutions to some very complex problems that we've had over the last decade or two in our business. Boats, fuel, and technology are not a harmonious combination of elements to make it easy to actually reduce your carbon footprint. And lots of partnerships. It is absolutely key to network and put yourself out there with other like-minded individuals, businesses, organizations, NGOs. You just never know what piece of information or what golden little nugget you'll take away from a conversation over a cup of coffee or passing somebody in a street. Next slide, please. Some fun facts. Every year since 2005 has been our next best year, excluding 2020 and 2021. But by 2022, we had exceeded our best year of 2019. 2023 was our best year, and 2024, guess what? It's our best year ever in the history of the company, going back to 97. We have changed an industry based upon the choices we've made. Polite peer pressure is freaking awesome, and I am ridiculously competitive because I know that there's a lot of room for improvement. And as a result, we've actually made a difference. We continue to find savings implementing new technology, just as an example. 25% fuel savings with the installation of a hydrofoil technology on one of our catamaran boats. That is massive in our world. It paid for itself in the first year. We saved $70,000 in fuel the first year with just that one piece of technology. Across the board, 5 to 10% fuel savings with newer engines, newer propeller designs, better bottom paint, etc. And people want to work for and with us because of all the things that I've already touched on with you at a very high level, which means less money for recruiting, higher retention of quality team members. We have a team of 45, 3/4 or more return every single year and have for about the last 6 or 7 years. Guest reviews clearly reflect an appreciation for a company who is being responsible and accountable. People will pay top dollar for a company that is doing things for the right reason. Next slide, please. And tips on what to do next, in my humble opinion, just start. Stop thinking about it. You can go down that Google rabbit hole and you can lose yourself for days, weeks, and months. Honestly, just hit the play button, get going, start somewhere, understand your business and collect the data. You have to have that foundation. You got to create that benchmark, and it's okay to ask for help from sustainability consultants. Webinars like this, Deep, great job. The information was spot on, honestly, from my humble opinion, guys. Yeah, that's a lot of really great information. Network with other like-minded businesses. I know I've already mentioned that. I will restate that. And there's a lot of online resources. And then take action. Start small. Get that little win. That win turns into two, two turns into four. And I know that's kind of twee and sort of you've all heard that before, but it really is the truth. You just start with one action, you do it, you nail it, you go on to the next one, and all of a sudden you're creating this really cool internal culture amongst your team. And share with your team, involve them, share with your community and your customers, communicate that outwardly. And over time, add more and watch your ecosystem grow. It has been the most incredible journey since 2005. It is super awesome. And I could talk for hours about all the opportunities and all the partnerships and all the business leads that have come out of just generating this really cool organic living growing thing that it's like tending a garden, right? And last but not least, be proud of what you're doing, and above all, do not forget to have fun while doing it. If you're not having fun, it feels like work. If you're having fun, it's work, but then it's not, and then you kind of get excited. As you may have noticed, I get a little excited talking about all this stuff. And that is probably the biggest tip of them all. Next slide, please, Deep. And I know that is really short and sweet and kind of down and dirty and quick. And I was, I think, pretty much on time deep, but I really wanted to leave time for some questions because there's a lot to touch on. And I really just would like to resonate with more of what you want to learn more about in terms of what I've just presented. And hopefully I can offer some wisdom or some advice or offer some help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brett. You were definitely on time, and we have a little over 10 minutes for questions. So, you've really touched upon all the important topics, and I really resonate with, just pressing play because there's things that you will learn instead of trying to learn everything before you get started. Just learn along the journey. And I'm sure like that's something that you probably had experience with, starting in 2009 or 2011 with your first hiring your first consultants, but it's so much that you learn along the journey. So, yeah, thank you again for your presentation. And if anyone has questions, now is the time.
Yeah, I have a quick question actually about the hydrofoil.
Yep.
Um, what were all the is that is that type of hydrofoil relatively new technology, and what was the retrofit process like for that?
Sure. Yeah. We custom created a boat here in Victoria in 2017, a catamaran designed by some local naval architects who, of course, sold us a bill of goods. Shocker. And we built the boat, and over the course of a couple of years, we learned what we liked and we learned what we didn't like and where the opportunities were. And efficiencies were just not there. So we started to look over the globe in terms of boat designs, hulls, etc. We landed on a naval architect in Vancouver who specialized in catamaran hull designs, who also had speciality in designing hydrofoils. So an hydrofoil is, you can imagine two hulls connected with a bridge deck, and then between those two hulls, there's this essentially a wing that is mounted from one hull to the next. And what that does, in this particular case, it's a boat that is about 50,000 pounds with people. It's 60 feet long and it takes 60 people on it, and it's 17 feet wide. It lifts 20,000 pounds. That hydrofoil will lift 20,000 pounds. And by lifting the weight, you get the hull higher up out of the water, which reduces your water line, which increases your efficiency and reduces your drag. It also changed the performance of the vessel. So we had it engineered and designed. It was sent to Africa. Unfortunately, we tried to find some local people to build it, but it was beyond their expertise. So we had no choice but to go international. So in Africa, they build it with this special metal. They ship it here, and we assembled it ourselves. And it took about 2 or 3 days, and we slammed it in the water, and we were absolutely gobsmacked in the efficiencies and what it did. It was, yeah, pretty remarkable, actually.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got a question for maybe Deep and Brett.
Got it.
I think
Sounds
my
great.
my audio has been on the whole time. I missed that one. Um, Brett, it's a family business, and you're endeavoring and prioritizing to do the right thing, and you're taking a leadership role in that in your sector, and taking the responsibility to do that. Um, what I've seen in a lot of cases is the a lot of corporations are not family owned, and they're driven a lot more by financial um, stewardship and less so much for these initiatives that you're talking about. Um, so my question is, is if a company doesn't have those same values that you just portrayed, but they're geared more, their decision making is geared more on financial um, return on investment, which did kind of come up earlier. Um, can it be said that financially it is a viable plan as well? And also, the two-part question is there any support available from the federal or provincial government for taking on these sorts of initiatives?
Ooh, great question. If one works for a company or a corporation that is driven by return on investment, then it really is a matter of looking for projects that are proven and trialed, so you're not R&Ding it yourself, which unfortunately in our boat world is typically what we're left to do, because a lot of the cool stuff hasn't been done in our part of the world yet. And find those projects where you can speak to, where you can show savings in the money, right? So like if it's a big building, if it's energy efficiency, and it's a heat recovering system or whatever that is, and of course that's beyond my expertise because I'm a boat guy. But I guess that's how you would speak to the food chain, or the food chain of management and owners of corporate companies where the dollar drives the decision making.
Mhm.
Um, Interesting enough, though, that over time, I think that if, in our particular case, as time went on, the more our team became aware of what we were doing and the more we involved them, the more they bought into it. And there have been times where they have driven us to make some decisions. So to share that with you, and maybe I'm a little bit over optimistic and that's ambitious, but you never know if you can get the team to buy into it. They can apply some polite pressure that goes up the food chain, and you never know where that goes. In terms of federal money, the boat world is interesting. There are some grants available here and there, but they are quite specific and typically are geared towards larger industries, i.e., fishing, etc. Whale watching and recreational boating are often the user groups where you're having to figure it out yourself, and it's quite costly. Had that hydrofoil not worked out, that would have been a $70,000. Oops, well, we tried it.
Wow.
It didn't really work, but it did. We got lucky. But there are other things, there's propeller designs. I mean, one propeller for one of our boats is a $10,000 investment times two. That's $20,000. You hope to hit the mark. If you don't, you throw them away, you sell them, and you have to redesign it and try it again until you get it right. It's very expensive. So there is some grant money, not to the tune of sums of money where I would like to see, hundreds of thousands of dollars to retrofit our boat with a hydrogen fuel cell technology. That would be cool. In our world, hydrogen fuel cells are, I think, what we're going to have to be looking at in the next 5 to 10 years. But hydrogen availability is simply not there, so it's not ready for us. But we are looking at that seriously. And just for a fun fact too, we did look at electrifying one of our boats, one of our 50 passenger catamarans, which is 55,000 pounds. And this was back about 7 years ago, I guess. And we did the math. We would have to put 20,000 pounds of batteries in the hull to have maybe enough energy to do 60 nautical miles and back round trip. Um, but that maybe would get you back. Then you'd have to recharge to be able to do another trip and do that twice in a day. And the infrastructure is not there. So, and of course, the boat would sink. I mean, forget about putting 20,000 pounds of battery on your boat. It's just not going to work. So
Mhm.
that was prohibitive. But the hydrogen fuel cells are, I think, something that we're going to be looking at in the next 5 years plus as technology advances. And the marine industry is always the last one to get it. It always starts on the road systems, right, with the big trucks and buses and the more dense transportation systems around the world. Because of course, economically, it makes more sense to put the tech into the R&D into those systems because they can sell it more broadly.
Yeah, and just to quickly add to that and like answer the second part of your question, we have lots of members like Synergy and even through our BC Green Business Program, and different members have different motivations. Some of them, they are motivated to, be more eco-friendly just to attract more consumers because that's what people want. But there are also ways to kind of like tie both in together, both economic gains while also reducing your carbon footprint. And um, there are incentives in place. BC Hydro provides incentives. For example, you can receive up to $25,000 or like 50% of the total cost, the total installation cost for solar panels if you're a business in BC. So there's options like that. Again, as Brett mentioned, I personally would also like to see more so that we can further encourage businesses. But yeah, I think even for the federal government to meet those targets, we'll see more incentives come in place. There's already a few that, depending on what sector you're in, you can kind of apply to. There's some for tourism specific sectors. Um, and then others for, other industries. But yeah, I hope that like helps kind of like answer your question.
Yeah, we just sorry,
Thank you.
a quick real world example. We did actually apply for a micro grant through DBC, which is Destination British Columbia, Keith, and that allowed us to apply for $15,000, which we were then able to apply towards the purchase of three new motors for one of our boats. Well, that's $105,000 investment for three motors.
Mm,
$15,000 was nice, it helped. And we were able to save probably close to 10% on our fuel savings, right, with that investment. So that $15,000
mm,
helped. It wasn't the deal breaker, but it was available, so we went for it, and we were fortunate enough to receive it. So that was great. And Synergy helped us with that.
Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Great. We have a couple more minutes here. So any last questions here for Brett or myself?
I have a question regarding the certificate you were suggesting, the biosphere certificate. It's for tourism, exactly, right?
I believe it is for tourism, perhaps.
So, what do you recommend to other industry? Like my industry is consulting. So, is there any specific certificate that can make my business differentiate to comparing to others?
I don't have the answer to that because I'm so embedded into the tourism industry, but I know Deep and or friends at Synergy would be able to assist or dig up something. Certification programs are all over the world. And I can tell you that in tourism, specifically globally, forget about Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, North America, globally, sustainability, if you are not thinking about it or already doing it, in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to be so far behind in the market share that you're going to have to reevaluate and you're going to be playing catch up. Like it is very mainstream. Sustainability, when we were sort of embracing it back in 2009 and carbon neutral, what's that? Those were interesting words before they were cool. And sustainability now for us at Eagle Wing Tours has been a great journey, but it's really all about regenerating and making our place better than what it was before we actually existed as a business. So sustainability just speaks to maintaining what the status quo is, but moving forward, we think we can do better. But in terms of certification, there has to be something out there in terms of just being a corporate sort of consulting business. I don't pretend to know what that is, but Synergy and or other consultants would be able to help you with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, nothing really jumps to mind right away, but with a consulting or a home-based business, you can definitely apply for BC Green Business.
I
Um,
already applied.
oh, you did? Awesome, great. Yeah, so we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
And sorry, BC Green Business has helped us out tremendously as well. So that is a program that we do, and they have more broadly made it available for more than just tourism businesses. So good for you. Good choice.
Great. And with that, we are almost at 6 p.m. So thanks everyone for tuning in today. I hope you all learned something and found the webinar enjoyable. Thank you again, Brett, for joining us today and sharing your experience and your knowledge. It was really, really interesting to hear you talk about all the initiatives and all the great work that you're doing. So yeah,
Okay.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. I'm just going to actually throw my email into the chat. If any of you have any questions and you want to go a little bit deeper into anything, just let me know.
awesome.